Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Art of Actualization. Today, we're talking about living a life that mirrors your values and what's genuinely important to you. I want to discuss the challenges to this, especially the mental roadblocks that we face as social animals, and I want to talk about how you can uncover your true values and desires despite those psychosocial challenges. I'm hoping this will help those of you that might feel untethered or dissatisfied with your current lives. If you do feel aimless or dissonant within any area of your life, it may be that you just haven't uncovered what matters to you yet, or maybe you're suppressing it to stay on track with other people's expectations of you. I want to help you peel back those restrictions today so we can start to live more authentically. Even the best of us can find ourselves conforming to norms in one area or another that don't actually work for us personally. This is partly because the pressures we get from society, family, and friends all start so early that it can be really tricky to untangle ourselves from them. This is why we get things like comp het behaviors or people working in jobs they hate for their entire life. For a lot of us, it has to start with intentionally questioning social norms and expectations. This doesn't come naturally to everyone, especially if you weren't allowed to question authority as a child. Social norms are essentially a nebulous authority figure that's made up collectively of the society we live in. Questioning that kind of omnipresent and intangible authority figure can be really hard, so even when you do it intentionally, it might take more than simply asking yourself if that's what you want one time. I'm going to assume that if you're here listening, you want to live for yourself and you want to stop adhering to those norms and expectations that hold you back. That's perfect because my message is for women who are ready to take responsibility for their power and live the lifestyle that's best for them. However, if you're in a place where you want to be exactly what people expect you to be, this will not be for you. And in fact, it may be triggering for you. I'm letting you know that so you can leave. Listen to something that will actually help you meet that goal because this podcast isn't going to do it. Now, if all you know is that you want to live differently and you're not satisfied with your life as it's going, that's okay. But without the foundation of knowing you want something different, you'll have a hard time pushing through. And like I said, you might just be triggered by these direct challenges to that mindset. I've seen this in friends and family, and of course, in plenty of strangers on the internet. Confronting these ideas can be hard work, so you really have to want it for yourself. And as you start and throughout the process of figuring out what you actually want, journaling is going to be an indispensable tool. Don't just think about what you want or why you've been doing things a certain way, but write it down, get it out into the world. When you write about it, you can connect with it in a different way and uncover things that keeping your thoughts in your head would just make it really easy to miss. You can also revisit those journal entries later on and recognize patterns you might have missed if you just had a fleeting thought about it a few times here and there. Some people would call this shadow work, and there is an abundance of journaling prompts and pre-formatted notebooks out there you can look into to guide you through this process. Some prompts that come to my mind are: what makes you feel safe or valued? What are your thoughts around the ethics of money? And when did you first think those thoughts? When are you most judgmental? And there are truly endless other prompts that you could use. I could even create a list for you if that's something that you're interested in. But it's really most important that you just explore how you view and navigate the world around you, what you actually feel about those choices at your core, and why you feel that way. Once you understand that, consider whether that's actually a logical belief system and whether or not it's moving you towards the life you want. If you want to be compassionate, but you always snap at people when they exhibit a certain behavior, that's actively going against the person you want to become. Ask what about that behavior is so triggering for you and try to construct a rational reason somebody would do that so you can have compassion. Then it will be easier for you to take a beat next time before you get mad. You can make that pause longer over time, distancing your trigger from your response so you can react the way you want to. That gets easier when you understand why you're reacting that way to begin with. Or, for instance, if you wanted to be able to focus on certain activities and projects, but you spend the last and first hour of most days scrolling on TikTok, that's actively making it harder for you to reach your goals. Why are you doing that? Are you intentionally derailing yourself? Are you trying to distract yourself from reality instead of changing it? When you can see what you're doing, it's much easier to tell yourself, okay, right now I'm trying to distance myself from my reality instead of improving it. Let's improve it a little bit, right? And you can choose a healthier outlet. Maybe you read at night or you kickstart your day with a short exercise routine every morning. This way, you're not thinking about how hard life can be in those moments, but you are doing something that can make your life a little bit better. These are examples of changes we can make when we're informed about why we do the things that we don't want to do. And maybe the quickness of those examples makes that sound easy, but introspection can be very difficult. This might not happen for you in the first week, especially with bigger things like job changes and comp behavior, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. There are a lot of those bigger things in each of our lives that will take more time to unravel and to shift our thoughts and behaviors around. And that's completely okay as long as we don't make that an excuse to give up on ourselves and on this process. I think there's also some value in enjoying the journey of self discovery that you're embarking on, or embracing a sentiment of curiosity around this process, rather than just slogging away to find things you can change. It's tough, but exploring some sillier things might help with this. Why do you love your favorite food, for instance? What was the first time you ate it? What's your best memory of eating it? Is it a specific ingredient that makes it special to you, or the dish as a whole? It's great if you can have fun as often as you get serious. Some big values you might want to explore are: what 3 things you would change about the world if you could change anything? What 5 words do you wish people would use to describe you, and why? Who needs your help in the world? Why is your partner, or why is your best friend? How did your parents treat your education and curiosity as a child? And so on. This can be heavy stuff and it can really rock your boat in ways that you do not expect. So, having a therapist, or at the very least, a really trusted friend that you can talk to as you go through this process with yourself, is really helpful. Honestly, as I was doing this with some of my most peculiar behaviors, it felt really good just to tell somebody else this event in my childhood is why I do this weird thing. Just not to be the only one holding that truth about myself felt like a big release. Of course, you do have to be prepared for that social aspect of our behaviors, norms, and expectations to show up when you share. It's possible that you'll tell somebody about how a belief has been limiting you, and they'll try to tell you that the belief was right all along. They may very well share the same limiting belief or normative behavior you've uncovered in yourself and not be willing to let it go. Or they might just have ideas around it that apply to them, but not to you. We all have different values and different needs, and that's the point of this episode. A big part of this is going to be learning to consider and then filter out advice that doesn't apply to you. In this podcast, I'm literally telling you how to live your life sometimes, and it might seem really prescriptive, but I never actually want you to blindly obey my demands or anything like that. I'm giving you advice that I hope you'll take or leave based on your needs. I have an image of you and your goals in my head, and I create these episodes for that character. And while I hope I'm close enough that most of it applies, I do know that you are not a character in my head. You're a real person. So your mileage may vary. I hope you'll genuinely consider what I have to say, and I hope you give it a try. I also hope you have the discernment to know what applies to you and what just doesn't. That's something you need to develop for yourself. And for some people, that can take longer because of maybe their childhood or other things in their history or whatever. It's worth the work to get to a point where you can genuinely consider something and see the value in it objectively, but say, that's just not what's going to be best in my life. It's especially important that you can do this in a way that isn't clouded by limiting beliefs. This should be colored by what you want and the idea that you live in a world where you can get most of it, if not all of it. I do see people use their limiting beliefs as this filter, and it's a real shame. Personally, my filter is more, but is that the life I want for myself? And is this a cause or a norm I want to support? I urge you to consider that going forward when people are projecting their values, limiting beliefs, or expectations onto you, and especially as you're sharing what you found through this practice of reflection. Even people with the best intentions and the most love in their hearts can still be wrong about what's right for you. And that doesn't mean anything is wrong with them or that anything is wrong with you. It's just the reality of being a human in today's world. Another sort of social aspect of doing this reflection is the challenge of changing your mind and saying that you've changed it. Even once you've uncovered a lot of your beliefs and decided what you value and what direction you want to go in, The work never stops. You keep having more experiences, learning new information, and growing as a person. Iterating on yourself is okay. And in fact, it's pretty healthy. I probably titled this episode something like Living Your Values as the First Big Step, but you should know it isn't one step at all. Living your own values is walking the walk, and it doesn't stop after one period of introspection. You should continue to take time for introspection and be open to the fact that things change. Things change around you and things change within you. Your values, your desires, and even how you express them won't be exactly the same in 3 years, let alone 10, because you will grow as a person. And that's actually pretty great. I'd go so far as to say that if you really are exactly the same in 5 years as you are today, you aren't doing what you're meant to do. I have a lot of core values, traits, and interests that have stayed the same, and of course you will too. But I also have a lot of things that I used to hate and I've come to love, or I have behaviors I used to be proud of that I no longer feel are the best way to move through the world. I'm the same person at my core, but my approach has changed, and I've gained a lot of skills and experience that have guided my growth in different ways. We do what we can with the resources and experience we have, but when we know better, we do better. And that's great. As my abilities change with age, what I put my energy towards will change, and I welcome that because to change is to be alive. Seriously. Try not to get too frustrated if you can't figure out everything that matters to you and start living your life perfectly overnight. Taking your time is a really good thing because realistically, even if you could somehow process all that change psychologically, you cannot make all those changes to your life immediately. Lifestyle changes take time. For example, I'm vegan, and that's something I've found was in line with my values, and I have several other dietary restrictions on top of that due to medical issues. I follow all these restrictions because I respect myself and I want to be healthy and I want to be the change that I was just seeing in the world. But I did not become a gluten free, tapioca free, banana free vegan overnight. I went vegetarian, just cutting out meat as a kid, and no one supported my choice. No friends, no family. I was actually physically assaulted over this choice, which is pretty crazy to think of now. But I adjusted to that diet and it became my normal, my habitual way of being. I was no longer making the active choice not to eat meat at every meal. It was just automatic. Even all those friends and family adjusted and eventually supported, or at least respected, my decision. When I was old enough to have more control at 18, I went vegan. And after a while, that was my new normal. I didn't have to think much about it except maybe at certain restaurants. And then all the health stuff happened several years after that. And each of those restrictions was also staggered. They didn't all happen at once. All these big changes happen incrementally over time, and they each individually become second nature to us. And this can happen to you unintentionally through what you accept from the world. You can slide into a life where you incrementally but habitually begin to follow norms that you don't believe in until that's your entire life. That's why doing this introspection is so important. I revisit my dietary choices from time to time and decide that I still feel it's important to me. I care about the animals, about the environment, and about my health, and these dietary choices are still the right ones to support those values. That revisiting of my values strengthens my resolve. Taking control of the small changes you make and choosing them intentionally based on what you found to be important to you means you get to create the person you'll become and live in a way that feels right to you. And I want to make it clear that we have a lot of shared values that we just live out or prioritize differently from each other. A lot of people who care about the environment stage protests or take other actions and still eat meat, even though it's bad for the environment. Well, I've made a lot of lifestyle changes, but I don't tend to go to those demonstrations of protest very often. It's okay to have different ways that we express our values, and it's okay if you can't do everything for every cause that's important to you. I wish I could be more involved in a lot of causes that I just don't have the time and energy for right now. That's why it's so wonderful that there are people out there prioritizing different causes than I am. I didn't feel like I could do much about certain recent events, but seeing activists like Greta Thunberg literally sail into war zones to take action was super uplifting for me. It's good to know other people are out there working on things you can't focus on. You can support that action And maybe they can tell you what more manageable steps you can take without having to personally exert all the energy that needs to be exerted. For instance, I'm hosting this podcast because psychology, sociology, personal development, and the social sciences in general being applied to help us live better is a major interest for me, which I really enjoy studying. This means I can distill what I've learned and observed for you so you don't have to expend the same efforts I did. And this works across so many subjects and causes. There are people out there with any interest you can imagine, delving passionately into the topic. So please do not ever feel like you're alone in any value that you have, or like the weight of an issue is all on your shoulders alone. It's not. No one is living in this world alone, and the variety we all have in our choices and abilities is what moves the world forward. That's why this idea of uncovering and living by your values, regardless of the norms or expectations you've experienced, is so important to me. We all need to have those varied priorities and skill sets, not just to have a sense of meaning in our own lives, but to push the whole world forward. There's plenty we should all be united on, but even then, we can't give 100% of ourselves to every important issue in the world. The work has to be divided in some way because there is so much work to do. That truth makes it undeniable that finding your own path forward is good for society, not just for you personally. So I hope you can find what's holding you back and what matters most to you so you can start to live your best life. If this episode helped you do that in any way, please let me know and maybe share it with a friend. It seriously makes my day to hear that I've helped somebody, but either way, please rate the podcast so I know how I'm doing. And with that, I want to take just a moment to thank anyone who made it to the end of this episode because, girl, my asthma has been acting up. I tried my best in editing, but I know there were some crazy starts and stops. My intonation was all over the place. I will do better next week. Hopefully, my asthma will be better next week. But thank you so much for prevailing through this disaster. No, I'm sure it's not as bad as it feels in my head, but thank you nonetheless. I'll be here next week to talk about another way we can turn our dream lives into reality. So I hope you'll be here too. I love you. Bye.